everyone, and welcome to Cold Reads, episode 29. I am your host, Laura Nicole, and this show is brought to you by Resonant Audio Productions and Mephistopheles. Okay, that's all I wanted. I just wanted to show you to the people so that they knew you existed. You can go now. Oh no, now he's going to sit on my lap. Anyway, ow! Nope, that wire is not for chewing. Anyway. Hi, everybody. So today is going to be a long episode, and part of it is that I am really tired, and I could not find a great spot to cut this episode in half. And it also means that I will probably skip tomorrow or Thursday, one of the two, because we are getting towards the end. It is almost the end of this book. One more chapter after this one. So it's very exciting. And scary, because then I have to go solicit for short stories. Anyway, this week with me, I have two wonderful friends who are extremely talented at making voices sound amazing, which is great because we've got a lot of them. So first, let me introduce my dear friend, Greg Howe.
Hello.
And Greg, tell people what you do.
All the things.
Like what kind of things?
Right now, I am doing a music project called Everstar. I am also doing a production and recording and engineering business called Old School Productions, and I'm also the CEO of a tech company called Blade Logic.
Awesome. And I also have and also we have the amazingly talented Veronica Giguere.
Hi.
Hi. Tell everyone who's not familiar with you, which is like maybe 1% of the population, what you do.
I am a voice artist and narrator, and I help people tell stories.
Which is my favorite thing you say. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with chapter 21, and I will assign parts. So there are a lot of them, so I'm pretty much just going to go back and forth between the two of you and say, hey, you get to do this, and you get to do this, based on the tenor of your voices. Greg, you are going to play Eric in blue.
Yep.
And you are going to play Rice in the muted yellow.
Okay.
Veronica, you are going to play Dorian in the light red.
I get to be Dorian? Oh,
you get to be Dorian. You get to be Dorian, and you get to be Liza.
Okay.
Dorian, I will let you know, is he has Asperger's, so he speaks kind of quickly. And there's a slight bit of uncertainty to his voice, but that's just his tenor. He is, in fact, quite knowledgeable. As far as Rice goes, Greg, he is a supervisor type, so just be a concerned boss.
Okay.
Really, cats. I have to turn it and show you guys. There are two cats. Two cats on that chair were wrestling because they want to ruin my show. Anyway.
Okay, so you've got Dorian in, you said,
Dorian in light red, and then Liza in green.
Okay.
This is on page 1. Liza only has that one line.
Okay.
But use a different voice for her than your own.
Okay.
Let's see here. Next is Bailiff Richards, which I will have Greg do. He's kind of older. He's like in his mid-60s, close to retirement, has seen a lot, but is pretty procedural.
Okay.
There is one line that's in orange for him that is supposed to be in the highlighter yellow.
Okay. And he's whispering.
And he's whispering. But he also says some procedural stuff. Veronica, you get all the lines in purple. Because guess what? That's you.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Yeah, I wrote you in my book.
Oh man.
Yeah, you get to be the prosecutor.
I don't
State
die,
prosecutor.
do I?
No.
Okay. What? Some people have killed me off in books. I have to ask.
Listen, the only person who's been dying in this book over and over again is Beatrix Stonebriar, okay? She has died, I think, a total of 3 times in this book. And then has come back. Who wants to be the judge?
I can handle the judge.
All right, he's in the bright green.
Sounds
Veronica, do you want to also play the defense?
Sure, I can switch back and forth.
Sure, okay. I have no notes on the defense other than his name is, I think I named him Matthew or Michael Dublinsky. Yeah, anyway. And he is in teal. Okay, and then last but not least is John Haggerty Sr. And Greg, I want you to do that one.
All right.
All right. So Greg gets to do a lot of voices, and Veronica gets to do a lot of big parts.
Woohoo!
This is exciting.
It's very exciting. I'm so ready to be done. Podcasting every day is hard, dude.
Well, the only way to be done
is to finish.
Is to be done.
Oh, pull that and to start. You're right. You are totally right. And I will try really hard not to get distracted by adorable animals that decided that my studio is the best place to be. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started with chapter 27. 21. Wow, I'm doing really well to start. Here we go. Eric brought the car around to the front of the courthouse. I had returned to my normal size and hovered inside the car. Riding in the car was always an interesting sensation. I stayed still while the whole outside world moved around me. I smiled, remembering the first time I had ridden in a car. The rolling in my stomach that had once made me sick now exhilarated me. I would liken it to what humans describe as riding a roller coaster.
I'll see you inside,
Eric said, opening the window for me. I braced myself against the crisp, near-winter air before giving him a quick kiss. After this, I'm going to need a shower. I'm going to need another shower. A wry smile crossed Eric's face.
Can I watch?
Just watch, I winked. I pulled the collar of my coat up for good measure before going out into the air. I caught a glimpse of my face in the side view mirror. I didn't look terrible, but there were dark circles under my eyes, and my right shoulder bruise was visible at the collar of my shirt. Thankfully, the press were mobbing someone else closer to the large brick-and-mortar conclave of supposed justice. I shook my head at the way that we publicized everything about the legal system. As I started for the building, I saw a group of people that I recognized just by their jackets. First was Rice, wearing his classic black pea coat. He was conversing with a red and white snowboarder coat that I knew belonged to Liza, and a denim jacket with green hood that was specific to Dorian. "Hey, guys," I called as I approached. I had no qualms about raising my voice since we were far enough away from the crowd of reporters. Since they turned and their smiles slowly faded.
I thought I sent you out for rest, not to get into a brawl.
Rice cast an appraising eye over me. I'm all mended, sir. Just the bruises need some time to heal. And I need sleep for something like 2 days. I looked around at them. Each of them had some version of concern plastered on their faces. Really, guys? I was much worse yesterday. Magic does wonders to heal you up. Liza offered her shoulder for me to sit on. When I did, Dorian held up his gloved hand. In it, there was a necklace with an amulet with a recessed box. What's this? I asked.
I didn't want Haggerty to try to hurt you again, so I figured out how to counteract it.
He held up the amulet.
This is a believe box. I haven't come up with a good name for it, but in it is a recording device, and people who care and believe in you can record their voice.
He pressed the drop square, which turned out to be a concealed button. From the amulet came the tinny recording of Dorian's voice.
I do believe in fairies. I do.
He pressed it again, and another voice came out. This one was female, and I soon recognized Liza's voice.
I believe in you, Trix.
Each time the button triggered a new voice and message. With each affirmation, I felt stronger and more revived. I don't know how you did it, Dorian, but this is brilliant. Rice chuckled.
Well, we didn't hire him for his sense of humor. The kid is smart.
Thank you, sir.
Dorian's already pink cheeks seemed to get redder. After this is done, how about we get some tea and talk about this contraption? I said as I took the amulet. The button itself was as large as my head, but when I shrunk it down, it fit in my palm nicely. I wrapped it around my neck and tucked the life-saving button under my shirt. I pressed it once more to make sure I could hear it. Rice's muffled voice came from it, only so loud that I could hear it.
I'm glad to have you around, Beatrix.
The security of it made me smile. If I had any doubts or reservations about going into the courthouse before, they melted away the moment the metal touched my skin. I became aware that it wasn't metal, though. It felt like there was life ebbing from it. Dorian, what kind of stone did you use?
Onyx?
Clever, very clever.
When we're done, I will tell you about the other components I used.
He smiled. Dorian was a brilliant man with a childlike enthusiasm about his creations. He had obviously done his research, since onyx was a great protector and helps neutralize negative energy. I wondered what he meant about other components. As soon as we moved up the stairs to the courthouse, the reporters had lost their initial prey and had turned their attention to us. As they washed around us, my conjure formed a human shield for me. I flew around 3 feet off the ground, focusing on the seams on the back of Rice's coat. To my right, Liza held out her arms, keeping the hounding journalists back. Cameras flashed, and the cacophony of shutters opening and closing like 100 crabs making their way up the concrete streets. I couldn't hear any of the questions they were shouting at me. Slowly, we made our way up the steps, and a new group of voices came overhead. Angry voices, chanting over and over, "We don't need magic, we're fine on our own," were the only intelligible phrases I could make out from all of the noise. Their hate was palpable, and my hand instinctively touched the cool stone of the amulet. Oh, great mother, give me strength to survive this day. The press was not allowed into the building that day, a small blessing in itself, since I had to wait outside the courtroom. It was thought that my presence would agitate Haggerty. I didn't mind if he was agitated, but I didn't want anyone else to get hurt in the process. So I waited, and waited, and waited. Finally, the sound of a gavel rang out, and I could barely hear the the judge call the room to order. I wondered what the defense team would come up with to defend John's actions. Insanity? No, it couldn't be that. No, that couldn't be it. Either way, I would make my evidence known and tell them everything that we found before he attempted to murder me. I could hear the muffled voice of Veronica Giguere, our district attorney. She was a skilled wordsmith, and she told the story of the case with conviction, with just a pinch of emotion. Skilled as she was, I was glad she was on our side. Then another voice could be heard, Matthew Dublinsky. He was a defense attorney, and a good one at that, as manipulative and captivating as a cobra before it strikes. This was going to be a clash of titans. And sadly, I was about to have a front row seat to the match. Oh, Greg, that's you.
Figured. Beatrix Stonebriar.
A burly voice from the door said a burly voice from the door of the courtroom. Bailiff Richards and I had seen each other many times. He was a cool professional with military training, calm and vigilant. He was the prime example of what an officer of the court.
There you are. Come on, hon. They're playing your song.
Thanks, Richards. I flew over to the older man. The look in his eye gave me pause.
And be careful. The old hag's in a right foul state. We've had to restrain him twice, even before court started.
He looked at me with all seriousness. I will tell the truth, and if he attacks, I will defend myself. I nodded to him, and he led me into the courtroom. We were side by side as we entered the aisle. On the defendant's side of the room, the benches were full of protesters. I could see their signs rolled up between their feet, no doubt after orders by Richards and his fellows. On the side of the prosecution was a sea of law enforcement. Some of my friends from the crime lab, at least a dozen officers that I generally have contact with on a daily basis. This side sat up straight and looked at me with pride. These are all the people that make all the rest of the stuff bearable, I thought. I passed through the gate and made no attempt to look at Haggerty on my left. Instead, I looked to Miss Giguere on my right. A glimpse of a smile winked over her lips, and just as quickly vanished under her professional veneer. From her pressed red suit to her flawless hair, she was, as always, the picture-perfect tigress that you wanted in your corner. I took my place on the stand and had to sit on the railing, and the microphone was adjusted to be close to me without blocking me from view of the jury. Then I looked at the 12 and smiled to myself. Of them, there were at least 2 elves. The rest were impassive observers at the moment. Either that, or I would never want to play poker against them.
Raise your right hand, please,
said Richards.
You know the words,
he whispered. I swear by the deities I hold dear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, I said.
Please be seated,
said the Honorable Scott Haight. He was a tough judge, and you could find him referenced for the definition of the phrase by the book, and he couldn't stand crooked cops. On the other hand, he wasn't too pleased about magical beings in the first place. I remembered a case involving a succubus where he required that she be gagged during the court proceedings so as not to influence the jury. Like I said, he was a tough judge. I had hopes that he would be reasonable, but that was up in the air.
Prosecutor, your witness.
Miss Giguere approached the bench.
For the record, could you please state your name and title?
Beatrix Stonebriar, lead crime scene investigator.
Thank you, Miss Stonebriar.
She picked up her file and started looking through her documents. I knew this was just for effect. It was a tactic I'd seen before, where she would give her opponent the chance to think that she was unprepared, baiting him into believing that she could lose.
On the night of September 12th of this year, what were you doing?
I was investigating a homicide outside of the border convenience store.
And what did you find there?
We found a body that had all of its identifying features removed. That was a gruesome night.
Could you please explain what you mean by the features had been removed?
She started to go through her folder to find something. I assumed it was crime photos. The fingerprints were not there, almost as though it was just a plain bit of skin. As investigators, we typically see that kind of removal with people who have calloused fingers, but there were no calluses on this body. Also, the face was completely blank. There were no eyes, nose, or mouth. She held up a picture.
Is this the individual that you found?
I examined the picture. Sure enough, it was a picture of the crime scene, one of mine to be precise. I made a mental note to ask Rice about getting a smaller camera for me to make it easier to carry. Yes. Miss Giguere held up the photo to the gathered assembly and then handed it to the jurors. The reaction was that of gruesome awe. It would have been just disgust if they had actually seen it there, if they had actually been there to see it.
Now, your report on what caused the disappearance of the decedents. Now, your report on what caused the disappearance of the decedent's features states that the perpetrator used a banishing potion produced through alchemy.
That is correct.
Can you explain why a perpetrator who is targeting magical beings would be using a tool like alchemy?
There is more science to alchemy than ritual. Therefore, people who are afraid of magic but want to have an immense feeling of power have tended to use alchemy to do so. Putting down the file, she stepped in front of her table.
Now, Miss Stonebriar, is it also true that Detective Haggerty was assisting with this case as well?
Yes.
And did he say anything leading you to believe that something might be amiss during the processing of the crime scene? Objection,
Called the defense counsel.
Prosecution is leading the witness.
The judge stared down at the defense. Even from my profile viewpoint, the cold of his gaze was palpable.
Overruled, as this does pertain to the case.
Dublinsky sat back in his seat. He was vigilant, looking for his next opening. I could see his pen scribbling furiously. When I found a blotch of green substance on the victim's shirt, Detective Haggerty was reluctant to have the substance be analyzed by our technician, Dorian.
And why did you find that suspicious?
At the time, I thought nothing of it. Detective Haggerty was often uncomfortable working with Dorian. Miss Giguere clasped her hands together in front of her.
And why do you think that is?
I have no basis for my opinion, but my belief is that it has to do with Dorian's Asperger's.
Can you elaborate?
Dorian has a very analytical mind, and because of that, his social graces are not very well understood by most.
But you understand him. Objection, Your Honor. Prosecution is getting off topic.
Dublinsky said.
Sustained.
The judge says, turning his eyes on Giguere. Not to be put off, she merely bowed her head and changed the topic.
Why was it important to bring this evidence in for analysis?
I remembered the last few cases. The substance looked visually familiar to the substances found on other victims of 2 unsolved murders. The victim was wearing a badge for the Society of Magical Creatures. The other 2 victims were magics as well.
You found evidence to link the cases, did you not?
Yes. In the office of the 3rd victim, we found a stack of copied cases of the 2 other homicides and a note.
A note that stated, and I quote, "Leave now and no one else has to die." Is that correct?
She held up another photograph of the cases as they were stacked in the drawer. The note itself was cleverly done, cutting pieces of magazine and using construction paper and common glue to put the message together. No fingerprints or hairs. Nothing. Yes. From the corner of my eye, I could see Haggerty's vile, upturned lips, as though he relished what he had done. I put my hand on to the amulet. It thrummed this time with my heartbeat, drawing my eyes to the people seated behind Giguere's desk. All of the faces of my colleagues and friends here in the human world were looking at me at different intervals. They knew what I had gone through. Most of them had seen what Haggerty had done to me. They believed in me.
Miss Stonebriar,
Giguere's voice called me out of my reverie.
are you all right to continue?
Yes, I'm fine.
Will you please tell the court about the moments leading up to your encounter with Detective Haggerty?
I took a deep breath and walked myself and the jury through the night as best I could. I was entering notes on the linked information that I had discovered at the SMC. It was the 3rd time I had had to enter it. I thought that was odd, and I checked to make sure that I time-stamped the information. Our systems record our systems record who was the last person to edit the case. Usually I don't check because I don't have that problem. Or I had forgotten to hit save or a power outage. This particular time I had noticed someone else had edited the case. Each time I had entered the information, it was edited shortly after by someone with higher authority than me.
Which Detective Haggerty had?
Yes. And each time I saw the initials J.M. Hag, and he is the only person I know with that designation. She sighed. I braced myself. The next question was going to be the most difficult to relive.
Thank you, Miss Stonebriar. Now, I need you to describe as much detail as you could. What happened next?
I had been thinking about this for a long time. I had formulated every word over the week that I had been on leave. But as much as I had practiced my calm dissertation with all my experience in keeping my emotions in, I could not keep it together anymore. It wasn't that the description was hard, but it was a release of my emotions. Pain and betrayal of someone I trusted with my life took its hold over me, and I started to shake. I had saved my work on the department USB. I breathed heavily. My lungs felt like they were made out of lead. Then the door opened and closed. When I looked up, Haggerty was there. I pressed the button and heard the whisper of affirmation. Clearly, someone was putting a lot of hate on me. In any event, the next few breaths were easier. I can't remember exactly what was said, but he started to intimidate me, calling myself and other magics unnatural. He mentioned his son who had run away with an elf girl and how that disgusted him. I took a deep breath and said the worst part. Afterwards, he said the words, "I do not believe in fairies." I felt like all the breath had been sucked out of my body. Miss Giguere continued her questioning.
So it is true that those words are a method to kill fairies?
If the speaker means them, absolutely. It is a dangerous phrase. I pressed the button again and could feel my body respond to the statement that hit my ears. The people behind the defense looked ravenous. Apparently, Judge Haidt saw this too and issued an order.
Anyone who even thinks about saying those words will be ejected from the courtroom immediately. We do have telepaths in the room, and I will not have anyone murdered here today.
He wasn't bluffing. Just as soon as he had spoken, several guards swooped into a few of the protesters, covering their mouths and removing them from the courtroom. I could hear the muffled cries and pressed the button as I felt their hate tried to stop my heart from beating. The people bit the officers, and I knew that they would inevitably be charged with assaulting an officer. I was greatly appreciative of the amulet by this time, having used it at least a dozen times in the past few minutes. Seriously? Am I that awful? I thought to myself. Veronica did not even blanch. She merely used the outburst as a tool.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a case of a man who let his hate take him too far, committing 3 murders and abusing his power and skills to hide the evidence. Then he turned on his fellow servant of the law when she got too close. This man that we are trying is a killer and against those who are different, even those humans who are different.
She turned to the judge.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Then the snake rose from his basket chair. I dreaded this moment for weeks once I found out who Haggerty had hired for his attorney.
So, Miss Stonebriar, how long have you and the defendant worked together?
5 years. I had no intention of breaking eye contact with this man. He and his cause disgusted me. It was lawyers like him that made my job more difficult and at the same time more rewarding.
And in that time, has he indicated a violent nature?
He has always been an aggressive interrogator and had a tendency to lose his temper.
But did he ever hurt anyone?
I thought back to before the attacks, filtering through my memories and of observing the interrogations, and all of his little temper tantrums in the office. I couldn't find a single instance when he had acted out on his aggression. He liked gore. He liked gore at the crime scene, but nothing more. No.
And before his son had run away with his elven interest, was he difficult to work with?
He was not happy about me working with him, but he seemed to adjust with time. He began pacing the room.
And what about you? Did you have trouble adjusting?
That was an odd question. I waited for Giguere to give me an indication of whether or not to answer. Her face was blank. I shrugged. By the time I had finished the police academy, I had gotten to a point where the insults bounced off me. When I met Detective Haggerty, I was already a field investigator. What time frame are you asking about, Counselor?
The time when you were working with him.
The only thing he's ever truly done to annoy me was to call me Trixie the Pixie. Other than that, I have worked with more obstinate individuals. Haggerty started to cough and hastily got a drink of water.
So, what is your opinion of the hypothesis that the defendant might not have been in his right state of mind when he allegedly committed those acts?
The coughing persisted quietly, but I ignored it. The way that the crimes were carried out took a great deal of forethought. He also progressed in a method that we often see with serial killers who want to get caught. They start with an unknown, someone who is ambiguous or considered an undesirable. Haggerty kept coughing. Then he moves on to someone who gets more media attention, but is still vulnerable. Finally, he takes on a public official and then feels either that he is invincible or that he is going to get caught. I noticed that Haggerty had doubled over. He hacked, and white bubbles dribbled out onto the floor.
Call a paramedic!
Someone shouted. I looked at the judge. Your Honor, I can try to help him with magic.
Do it quickly,
he said.
Miss Burdett, please take your tape recorder over, but do not get in the way. Record everything that happens.
I didn't hear the rest of the instructions. I got a running start to my flight and got over to the table just as Haggerty had fallen over. He was writhing and twitching, but looking directly at me all the while. He sputtered. Calm down, John. I'm going to try to help you breathe. I cast a spell to open his airwaves. He still laid on the floor, He laid still on the floor and panted. Taking a long blink, he started to wheeze again, but could make some semblance of sense.
No time tricks. Cursed.
Cursed? John, you were cursed?
You said the words to free me. I'm so sorry.
His voice lowered, and he was barely able to take in breath. John, who did this to you?
Tell Jack, I was wrong.
His breath was getting colder, and his body temperature was dropping. I will, John, but please tell me who. Who was controlling you? I got right up to his mouth. He was moving his lips and tongue, but no sound was coming out. Alongside of his neck, a deep blue vein had snaked its way up to his ear. When I looked back at his eyes, they were empty. I looked up at the paramedics as they rushed in with their equipment. He's gone. And that was chapter 21. I'm sorry, I did kind of lie. Somebody died. It just wasn't Veronica. So yeah. So that was a lot of parts for each of you.
And what do we say to the god of death?
Not today.
You want cookies?
Sean Bean is over there.
Sean Bean is that way. Oh man, I love Game of Thrones. Anyway, what did you guys think? You both had a lot of hearts.
That was a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah?
That was nice.
I loved watching you interrupt yourself. Objection.
Well, okay. I had a feeling that it would also make Veronica blush a little bit, and I was doing a caricature of you.
I thought it funny. I actually did have a red suit once upon a time long ago.
and it was awesome. Like late 90s red pantsuit. I could
Oh my
rock that
God.
thing with red
Like-
lipstick. That was for Speech Team.
That's awesome.
Way back
Yeah.
in the day.
I recall first meeting you, and it was the year of the red dress.
I've gotten so much mileage out of that red dress. That was a clearance rack dress. That was awesome.
You know what? Those are the best things, though. Anything
I
that
tell
you
ya.
get a lot of mileage out. Yeah.
Yep.
I think you guys were fantastic. Especially, Greg, you had those lovely subtle differences between the characters that you were doing, and it was really nice to listen to.
Thank you.
I was immediately thinking of Nathan Lowell. I don't know if you were Veronica, because he does a lot of subtle differences between his characters, so you know who's talking.
Yeah.
But it's not so exaggerated.
Yeah. It's when you guys get to do that much more easily, I think. Because you can suggest stuff and you don't have to mess with your range as much and you can characterize around it. But
Yeah.
I
get that.
So Veronica, I have a question, because
Okay.
I talk about it a lot. So when you voice guys, is there something that you notice changes in the candor of your voice?
If I have if I'm dealing like with a lot of guys in a cast, then inevitably I'll go lower or I'll go gravelier. I think if anything, my posture will relax. Because if I know how the person is supposed to stand or hold themselves, then that seems to be a good way to elicit the voice that I need.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think about it anymore. I don't even think of like gender. It's like, this is what the character needs to sound like and who are they talking to, so I don't have to jump up and down a range to have two people talk to each other, because that just hurts.
Yeah, it does. One thing that when I have a lot of tea, and I think about these things, I think about how words are formed as they're coming out of my mouth. I get very pensive about it sometimes, but I notice that when I voice male characters, and I have to differentiate them from female characters, I do my female characters a lot warmer, and it's a little more back in my mouth. Whereas with male characters, the words are pushing out and things are a bit sharper and harsher. I don't know if you find that, but that's my style, I guess.
I can see that, but for mine, because some of the stuff I've been narrating lately is a lot of space battles and space people in the Marines, because we can't say the two things together because Warhammer will come get us. But when you in those cases, in those cases you have women in positions of power, and I will like flatten a voice and make it more clipped as they go higher up the chain. So the admiral's going to sound far more precise and clipped in her tone than, say, the captain or the lieutenant.
Interesting. So with authority comes diction.
Well, yeah, how else are you going to order everybody around?
It's going to be my new coffee mug. With authority comes diction. and I'm going to sell it to all the voice actors. Cool. Well, it's that time of night where I give you both the opportunity to pimp your stuff, as it were. Veronica, why don't we start with you? Where can people find what you do?
You can find me at voicesbyveronica.com if you're looking for a podcast about metahumans and space Nazis and all of the crazy antics in between, and you want to listen for like 6 days straight. You can go to secretworldchronicle.com. New season opening mid-September, early October.
I'm
Last
super
book of the
excited.
5-book series. It's going to be so awesome. And you can search for Veronica Giguere over on Audible and pick your poison. I narrate everything.
It's true. And Greg, where can we find you and what you do on the line?
On lines, I do music, and I do music production and recording. And you can find me at, right now, Facebook is the best way to deal with it. So Facebook, www.facebook.com/Old School Productions Music, and www.facebook.com/ I had this, hang on, brain.
Everstar Music?
Everstar Music, yes, thank you.
I happen to have show notes in front of me,
alcohol.
so I kind of cheat.
I can't even use alcohol as my excuse tonight because I haven't been drinking. So there you go. Just long day. But yes, those are the best places to find me right now online. And looking forward to hearing from anybody who wants to talk about music and recording music and music production.
Awesome. And you can find me online on Twitter at Nicole Audio. And you can find out more about Resonant Moon Audiobook Solutions at resonantmoon.com. Things that we do there is we work with audiobooks and podcasts to do quality control, making sure that the audio matches up with the script. And we also do some editing to cut down on chatter, to make the fan in the background go away, or things of that nature. And those are the things that I'm doing right now. And I do light narration. I'm just not combining them all at this moment. You can interact with us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, facebook.com/groups/cold-reads. I will occasionally have casting calls there for whatever I'm doing at whatever point. And we only have one more chapter, and I'm going to be doing it solo because there's no other voices.
Oh.
I'm very sad. Unless you want to come back and do the last chapter. You have a face.
I have a face.
After like, today's, I want to, but I can't.
Must save voice to finish other stuff.
I agree.
Yeah,
it's fine because then I can do it exactly when I get home and not have to worry about it. If you would like to do things the less than modern fashion way, you can also email me. My email is lauranicoleaudio@gmail.com, and you can send me either a short story or you can send me a note saying, hey, I want to be a voice on your next show. If you are sending me a short story, just keep it to 4 pages or below. And then if you've liked Stonebriar Casefiles and you want to purchase it, and that would be a great birthday present for me. You can buy it on Amazon. It's in paperback and in ebook, and the link is in the show notes, along with all of the links that we have mentioned here. And this work is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. What that means is that you can download it, you can share it, you can repost it. Just make sure that you link back to this YouTube page, and please don't change it. It is perfect the way it is, just like you. Why would you want to? And yeah, and if you like what I'm doing and would like to find out when I put out some new episodes, I'm going to a bi-weekly schedule after the month of August is over. You can hit the subscribe button, and I would be very appreciative. So that's it for me. I want to thank my guests so much for being so flexible with coming on tonight and with all the roles I threw at you.
It was my pleasure to be here.
You were muted, Veronica.
It was awesome.
Awesome. Well, and thank you all for watching. And without any further ado, say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.